Host would watch the beatings and hangings as if he were watching a movie, but with no reaction showing in his face. And that was a witness that was in prison in Auschwitz.
Hmm.
And that was very, very truthful to who we're talking about. We're on part 2 of Rudolph Hoess, and I'm Jen.
I'm Becky.
And this is Too Close to Home.
Nazi
Woo!
edition.
Yes, yes. Okay, so let me go through these sources again. Got to give the respect. The Commandant of Auschwitz autobiography by Rudolph Hoess. KL, A History of Nazi Concentration Camps by Nicholas Washman. Third Reich, The Fall and Rise on Netflix, a 2-part documentary. Nazi Death Marches, 1944 to 1945, Amazon Prime. Nazis at Nuremberg, A Lost Testimony on Hulu. Telegraph UK, Smithsonian Magazine, Auschwitz.org, GeoPeople Everyday Science, The Holocaust Encyclopedia, Sentinel University, World Holocaust Remembrance Center, Jewish Currents Organization, Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, Music and the Holocaust Organization, CNN, Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum, PBS, National Library of Medicine, BBC, History of Sorts blog, the Holocaust History Project, Jewish Virtual Library Organization, Facing History Organization, WW2 Foundation, Jewish Gen Organization.
Bam.
Oh, man. I mean, I did use a lot of sources.
You did.
We talked about, last time we talked about his childhood, Rudy's childhood, and his first experiences of war crimes. You know, getting into the concentration camps and launching into the Nazi ranks.
Really finding himself.
Yeah. Live, laugh, loving. Finding his groove. This time we're going to continue in his journey, but as he creates Auschwitz. And so he would I'm going to just kind of pick up where we left off because we were talking about the types of prisoners last time. Now we're going to talk about the types of guards because he also wanted to talk about that.
All right, let's let him
He wanted
lead
to
it.
do it like he was a scientist, I guess. He gave example of the 3 types of the awful guards. First was the most evil and lazy. They sought out to cause pain and humiliation. They would do things just to be malicious, like make the water in the showers boiling hot, or icy cold, or making prisoners stand in them, or egging on the capos, which are the inmate guards, to be extra rough. The second, which was the vast majority, who were indifferent and just did their job to the bare minimum as expected. They
That
followed
sounds like my colleagues.
right. They followed orders as instructed, and while they would also treat the inmates as objects like the evil guards, they did not regard them as playthings. They would do stuff like not paying attention to the inmates for when they turned the water too hot, and then they would ignore the shouts of the inmates, and then time would be up and he would just turn the water off. Well, it's your fault. You didn't get there. So the unwashed inmates would just like redress, and the guard still felt like he did his job. The water got turned on and it got turned off.
I mean,
what do you want from me? I can't wash their ass for you.
Did it say in his job description it had to be a manageable temp? I don't think so.
The third was the worst in his opinion. The ones who regarded the inmates as human beings.
Bastards.
And would be kind unnecessarily.
Bastards.
Their weakness of being sensitive would be seen by prisoners and exploited. First, it starts with passing a letter. And before you know it, you're helping them escape the prison, and that will not do.
Mm-mm.
While he writes how considerate and kind he was and how he abhorred the violence towards the inmates, he speaks of them as vermin who is evil-hearted and just not worth the air they breathe. Speaking on that third type of guard, he would delve into what he felt was the real remedy for inmates: work. Their day-to-day work would help them get over their emptiness and loneliness.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there were people who were loafers, in his opinion, not mine, who were content in doing nothing, but he felt that was the minority. He found himself to be of great mental health during his incarceration. That working gave him the ability to keep improving himself and move forward without being so completely drowned in self-pity.
Well, sure. When you're killing people, I mean, how can you not be motivated to just keep doing the best job there is?
He said the worst punishment for him would have been if you had taken his work away. I'm sure if you know anything about Auschwitz, you know about the sign that says Arbeit Macht Frei. That's over the camp's entrance. It means work brings freedom. Ica had stated that any inmate who worked hard enough to set them apart from the rest had their chance to gain their freedom. I could feel the indignation in Rudy's voice as he said, indeed this occasionally happened, until the war put an end to all good intentions. Sir, you never had good intentions. Stop it.
Stop playing. You're not cute.
By 1938, Germany had been under Hitler for 4 years. Overall, it was in a great stance economically by appearances. And having gone through the Night of Long Knives, where Hitler had his enemies executed, he had Germany poised to begin its genocide of the Jews. Dachau would be reorganized from the ground up by Ica, instilling control over the guards and dismissing or arresting those who made waves. I don't know what that reminds me of, but whatever. Ica would use Dachau as the poster child of what a concentration camp should be and would begin launching the overall vision for the concentration system. It would be because of this that in September of 1938, Hoess would get transferred with just a year left before the official beginning of World War II. He was given the post of adjunct in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Sachsenhausen, like all concentration camps, has its own horrific history beginning in 1936. Built by inmate labor, it would only be the beginning of what they would do to their prisoners. They would eventually go on to test military gear like boots and rucksacks, making them walk and run for miles on a meager starvation diet. Sometimes, to keep them going longer, they would give them cocaine or experimental drugs that contain codeine or methamphetamines.
Stop.
Like, you're tired? Here, snort some of this. Have a quick bump. This is also where
I did not ever know this.
The things they did, like Hogan's
Snort a line and get
Heroes,
back out there running
doesn't
home.
seem so out there anymore, okay? Because that shit was off the chain. People were just doing whatever the fuck. It's weird. For Nazis and Germans at that time to be, like, very precise and concise, the concentration camps were always a fucking chaos. Always fucking messy.
Just out there wilding out.
Anytime anybody came to the camps that had not been there before, they'd be, like, shocked, like, "This is it? What do you want from me? I'm doing the best I can." It's basically what he says the whole book. "I tried the best with what I had. They sent me here, I killed a lot of people, and then now they're gonna kill me for it.
And now everybody's a cokehead and just wants another line."
I can't keep up with this budget. Do you know how much Bolivian marching powder costs?"
This is wild.
This is also where the Nazis would start a slave labor operation, creating fake American and British currency to distribute and tank our economies.
Great.
When they were not making money or testing equipment, they would be subjected to medical procedures and used as guinea pigs to test medications and the first round of experimental gas murders. See, when they first got there, they were shooting inmates one by one in the back of the neck, which was impractical in their opinion.
Do you have any idea how much bullets cost at that time? You
I don't know. I don't. They went on to put them in the trenches. They'd line them up and they shoot them. Again, not practical. So they began fiddling.
I love the way you just so matter-of-factly talk about it's not practical.
It's not practical.
I know it's not your words.
Right. Thank you. That's the most important thing to distinguish this. You know that it's not my words, that it's a Nazi's words.
Yes.
They began fiddling around with mustard gas around this time.
Stop fiddling around. Oh my God.
The worst part.
This is horrible.
It is. It's terrible. But, like, the whole time I'm writing, I don't normally write jokes in. I just let them come. But as I'm writing, I'm putting in jokes. So, like,
because I'm like, I got to do something here to survive this.
Somehow. The worst part, of course, was the torture. See? Segues are horrible. They did freely and often torture the inmates. One of their favorites was the strappado. Do you know what that is?
I don't know that I want to, but you're going to tell me, so
I
go
am.
ahead.
So you tie their hands behind their back, and then you hang them from their hands, resulting in dislocations in their shoulders and severe pain. Possible breaks. A lot of tears and shit. They also had
these shoulders are already not in good shape, so I'd probably just swing in circles and be fine.
And they're all on, like, starvation diet, so it's like literal toothpicks.
God.
They had their own, quote, Sachsenhausen salute, where the inmate would squat and have their hands straight out in front of them for hours. Rudy would be at Sachsenhausen when the war began. That morning, Eike would give a speech described by Hoess. In it, he emphasized the harsh laws of the war now prevailed. Each SS man was committed body and soul, regardless of the life he had Here, there, too, led.
That happens to me sometimes.
Like, I just don't know why I can't get my brain around that word, but regardless of the life that they had led, there we go. Each order received must be regarded as sacrosanct, and even those who appeared the most harsh and severe must be carried out without hesitation. The Reichsführer SS, which was Himmler, demanded that every SS man should exhibit an exemplary sense of duty and should be prepared to devote himself to people and his fatherland, even unto death. Not for me, dog. That statement would become chillingly true within hours. That evening, Mueller of the Gestapo called and relayed that a courier would be delivering an order shortly, and it had to be carried out forthwith without hesitation. The order? Well, it was 2 police officials and a handcuffed civilian with a written order that said, by command of the Reichsführer SS, the prisoner is to be shot, he is to be informed of this while in custody, and the sentence is to be carried out 1 hour later, which is super rude. Now
Very
you're
rude.
committing me to a whole hour to this activity that I don't want to participate in.
Well, for the next hour, I'm just going to be completely crazy and make your life's hell and try to run away.
Exactly.
Maybe you'll shoot me sooner.
Oh, I was thinking about it from the Nazi point of view. You're thinking about it from the inmate.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, now I'm committed to this because they're not worried about this. They're worried about themselves. That's what I would think. So by this time, having been introduced to the upper echelon of the Nazi officials, seeing the things they were working towards and feeling confident that this was the right side to be on, he of course followed the orders without flinching. He got 3 of his soldiers and ran through the plan. They were going to erect a platform and have an execution by rifle. He led the prisoner up the platform, remarking that the man looked like he had resigned himself to the fact that he would die soon. They did allow him to write a letter to his family and have a cigarette, which is all one can ask for, really. You know what I mean?
I mean, at this point, yeah. Maybe some French fries, but I don't
You know
think they
what?
had any.
If I can ask for anything, can I have my life?
I had one wish.
Please.
But if we can't go number 1, number 2 is smoking some fries. Hot with salt. Don't give me no cold fries.
McDonald's fries?
Only when they're hot and salty.
Super hot.
Yeah.
It's crunchy ones.
Burn in my mouth.
I'm hungry, obviously.
Same.
So Rudy released the prisoner on the platform, took a step back, and shouted fire. And the prisoner would fall immediately, to which Rudy says he gave him the coup de grace and ended his life, which was point-blank shot. He was shot in the heart 3 times.
That seems excessive. The heart's tiny.
All in all, the man was shot in the heart 3 times. I mean that. Hoess literally wrote that. For someone who pretends to be remorseful, that was fucking cold to me. Because he said that, coup de grace. I gave him the coup. Who says that? Oh, I'm an unwilling participant, but I say coup de grace like this was a hurrah.
Mobsters.
Monsters. Thank you.
Oh, I said mobsters.
Oh, I thought you said monsters. Both.
I
see no lies.
Answers.
I see no lies. So this would be far from the last execution. Next was a little too close to home. I mean, they had been executing those who were deserters or saboteurs, and one face came up that shocked them. It was a SS police officer that he had worked with before, one that had brought several notable prisoners and official documents to the camp. Apparently, homie had been a little too nice to a prisoner that was up for execution.
The guard?
Yeah.
The one that was like guard of the year all of a sudden was being nice, and now he's like, we got to get rid of you.
Was the SS, he had worked with this SS officer before, and that he was like super, like, we had no problems.
Yeah, he was guard of the year, and now all of a sudden he's being nice.
He seems like this is confusing me. He had allowed a guy to go home to say goodbye to his wife. And of course he went with him, and they waited out front so he could go in, and he pulled a Jody and went out the back door.
Oh. I would have done the same thing though.
And so
I'd be like, I'm just gonna go in and say bye. Y'all can wait out here. I'll be right back out.
Don't worry. It's not. It's one door in, one door out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't worry about
it. Yeah, I don't even got windows.
See, those things just for show.
Yeah, just for show.
This earned him an instant court-martial, followed by a swift judgment of death.
Well, you know, even here in America, if you let an inmate escape, I mean, there are consequences.
I don't know
I'm
about
not
execution, but there are definite consequences. Somebody's gonna be going on a leave without pay.
I'm not while there's an investigation pending.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that the inmate deserved to be an inmate in this situation, but, sir, there are consequences for your actions.
Exactly. This time, though, which was tough for Host, was that he was ordered to be the executioner this time.
Oh, do you have to do the dirty work now, sir?
Like before, he did the firing squad deal, and his hands shook. And as he loves to say, he gave him the coup de grace to his head.
Mm.
He did everything he could, apparently, to not seem fazed by it, but afterwards, he said he and his commandant took a long, silent walk in the woods to recover themselves.
We went for a smoke break, and then we were good.
Yeah. Ica had always pushed obedience, and his motto that was on his letterhead was, "There is only one thing that is valid: orders." Host would say this is where he learned that you dare not step a toe out of line. The SS's responsibility was to protect the interest of the state at all costs, including the cost of a senior SS commanders who spoke out of turn. If you weren't killed for it, you'd be shunned by your own party, and to some, that would be even worse than death. I don't know about you. I think that death's worse, but
Same.
that seems like a little dramatic. But I'm actually beating my own drum. You know what I mean? I'm not much of a follower. In the change of prisons, he saw more types of prisoners. As time moved, the types of prisoners rapidly changed from political to just one of the subhuman categories. One of the most interesting parts of this was the category of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not fixing to delve into Jehovah's, but a short
Please don't. They'll be at your door later
for
anyway,
real.
so.
A short description is like if you took Jesus and then you called him Jehovah and then basically waited for the world to end. That is a inaccurate simplification, but I'm not here for religious wormholes unless it involves Satan and demons, okay? The important thing to note is that they don't like fun. Like they don't celebrate holidays.
Birthdays.
Yeah. They believe the world's coming to an end. They did not believe in violence, so they refuse to take up arms or participate in anything political and are deeply fanatical about their religion. This is why they were in concentration camps, basically. They were fanatical about their religion, and that was a threat to the influence of Nazism. Nazis were the opposite of witnesses. All violence, all about purifying Germany and making it great again.
All the time.
All the time.
Making it great again. I saw the way you slid that in.
Witnesses would abstain from the highest degree. Witnesses would abstain to the highest degree and would prophesize against violence, undermining Nazi principles in Hitler's eyes. They made them sign papers promising not to be witnesses anymore and to not add any more witnesses to the organization, but due to pressure from the ones who didn't sign, many would persist in their faith. They hoped to suffer like Jehovah, and dying in his name was like an ultimate goal. They usually went with delight, basically running to the gallows, hands upstretched in salutations, ready to be embraced by Jehovah for all their suffering.
I don't wanna be any part of a religion that my goal is to die a torturous, painful death.
Yeah. If they ended up being conscripted as soldiers, they would refuse to touch weapons stand at attention. They basically refused to do anything whatsoever for the military. This was infuriating as Nazis want the only blind obedience to be to them.
Yeah.
Okay? We can't be sharing this stuff.
Mm-mm.
Host would comment that the only prisoners he ever saw to enjoy punishment and by far the most devout of all the prisoners were the Jehovah's Witnesses. I have met many religious fanatics in my time, on pilgrimages and monasteries in Palestine, on the Hijaz Road in Iraq and Armenia. They were Catholics, both Roman and Orthodox, Muslims, Shiites, and Semites. But the witnesses in Sachsenhausen, and particularly two of them, surpassed anything that I had previously seen. These two, especially fanatical witnesses, refused to do any work that had any connection whatever with military matters. They would not stand at attention or drill in time with the rest or lay their hands along the seam of their trousers or remove their caps. They said that such marks of respect were due only to Jehovah and that the man and not to man, they recognized only one Lord and Master, Jehovah. Both of them had to be taken to the block set aside for Jehovah's Witnesses and put in cells since they constantly urged the other witnesses to behave in a similar manner.
I mean, I'm here for that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Resist.
I
Baby,
love every
resist.
bit of it.
Iga had frequently sent them to be flogged because of their anti-disciplinarian behavior. They underwent his punishment with joyous fervor that amounted almost to a perversion.
You mean were they like, do it again,
Do it again.
It tickled the first time.
Yes, because they said the next part of the quote is they begged the commandant to increase their punishment so they might be able better to testify to Jehovah.
I wonder if that would work if I got kidnapped. I'd be like, you're only pulling one nail? Pull two, because I want to be like Jehovah.
Yeah.
If they'd be like, I would freak them out.
Exactly. Then they get all turned off by it. You know what I mean? After they'd been ordered to report for military service, which needless to say, they flatly refused. Indeed, they refused even to put their signature on a military document. They were too condemned to death by the Reichsführer SS. The fact he was like Pikachu face shocked made me laugh inadvertently because he was like the pot calling the kettle overly obedient.
Like, hold on.
He had long struggled with his religion, so following a made-up entity versus real people, I can see his confusion there, but that is so black and white, I can't handle it.
Yes, 100%.
Like, sir, there is a lot of gray here. Hoess would also draw attention to the fact that Iga and Himmler hated the witnesses, but yet they greatly admired their ferocity in being loyal to Jehovah, and that the SS, too, should show such unwavering obedience to Hitler and the Nazi Party.
Well, they're like the ideal person for them, because if they could get their laser focus on Jehovah off of him and onto them, they would be their best little soldiers.
But they never could.
Oh, yeah.
So they were like, well, we're going to murder him. But he's getting turned on by it. He said that Jehovah likes it. I don't know what to do.
They're like, live, love, laugh, Jehovah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Now, let's talk about some of my favorite people in all the world, homosexuals. Of course, they were their own category of prisoner. Just like now, and has always been, there is a severe prejudice against homosexuals. I don't know why everybody's concerned with who people are kissing, but that's not my business.
I don't think I'll ever be able to wrap my mind around why people give a fuck.
Yeah. Like, baby, do you wake up and see them in the mirror every morning? Because you see yourself.
I just don't get it.
You're not answering the pearly gates for them, just for you, boo-boo. And I think Jesus wouldn't like the way you're acting right now.
Oh, no. According to them, Jesus would like the way they're acting.
It's not very pro-life of you. Also, I want people to know that I refer to the types of prisoners. The way I refer to the types of prisoners isn't my personal labeling. I don't walk around calling people Jews and homosexuals. I'm just using the context of what they called those prisoners in that time. Okay? Put that out there. Not a Nazi. I'm not saying it in a derogatory manner. That's the label they
probably
had
good
for them.
to put that disclaimer out there because
trying to me.
I would never assume you did, but maybe not everybody would assume. They might think you just walked by and were like, hey, are you a Jew? Are you a Jew?
Hoess and Nazis were anti-LGBTQ+, but when it suited them. Some prominent leaders...
Like you were allowed to in prison, but not on the outside.
Right. Also, in the case of really high prominent leaders of the Nazi regime.
Wait a minute. Okay, never mind. I'm going to let you finish before I make my comment.
So there's one that was very well known to be gay and live out in the open pretty much without retribution until they were no longer considered in the Nazi regime. And that, like in the case of the long night of knives, where Ernest Röhm, a Nazi who is the highest ranks and openly homosexual, had become vocal against some of Hitler's ideas, and he would be murdered for it. And they would be like, well, he was homosexual.
But it was cool before that.
It was cool for like the last 5 years, but not now.
As long as he was Hail Hitler.
Yeah.
But as soon as he stopped doing that.
When he stopped Heilen, that's when he had to dial in, okay?
Just making sure I understand the rules.
Yeah. They're all made up.
They are, and they're
constantly change.
They're hard to follow.
They got a little back and forth. There's a lot of gray areas, despite them trying to be very black and white about it.
Yeah, there really is.
He would speak of homosexuals in the camp as if they were old prison friends, as he witnessed it in prison. But let's be clear that these folks weren't in there for any other fact than that they were gay. Not that they were in jail for a crime and just happened to be gay. That's two different things. What you like to fuck and breaking the law is not interchangeable or equal. But here we are. Hosts would describe how they would split up all the homosexuals amongst the buildings, only to receive a lot of complaints about the activities. So hosts would put them all in one building with strict guards and restrictions to prevent sex. With that happening, Rudy would say, quote, thereafter, only isolated cases of unnatural intercourse occurred. He would speak on the various types he observed in a very clinical way, saying, quote, I can only add that I found the habits and mentality of the various kinds of homosexuals and the study of their psyches under prison conditions extremely instructive. I was like, sir, are you taking bedroom tips?
I think he's taking notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
First, you just had sexually deviant men who were basically, this is his categories, okay? This is what he thinks gay people are.
Okay.
First, you had like the sexually deviant men who were just like so horny, they got bored of women, and that's why they were gay.
Oh, okay.
Like, you know what? The V ain't working. Let's go into the B.
Okay.
Then you have those who are on the cusp and able to be saved. You know what I mean?
Okay. Just
like,
need some prayer.
Yeah. They would have exercises where they would hire sex workers to act seductively towards these prisoners to cure them.
Oh, okay.
And while some were cured, or what I assumed, faith being cured to escape the camp.
I would assume that as well, but carry on. What do I know?
The others were far too gay to even pretend, according to Rudy. One thing that really struck me was how he couldn't connect love to gay relationships. Like, seriously, it was perplexing to him how they would want to be with each other and would die for each other. He would recall a few committing suicide when their partners, or, quote, friends, as he would say, passed. Like, what? He had particular disdain for...
So they were terminal gay.
Terminal. Forever. As Andre 3000 would say. He had a particular disdain for the Stressjunge, which is a type of German sex workers. His disgust wasn't that they were gay, but that they were lazy and shirked all work.
Oh, they were working it, baby. They were working it.
That being sex workers was just their trade, and that's why they were gay.
Oh, okay. I like the way that they're weaving through those lines. I'm not really gay. That's just my job.
That's just my job. Yeah. That's my 9 to 5.
You know I go home to my wife every night.
I file gay on my 1040. Okay.
But what? I'm married filing jointly with my wife.
Exactly. Just to remind you, this is an autobiography and it reads very much like that in that he'll jump thoughts because one thing reminds him of another. And in this case, it was the furious, masturbating Romanian prince.
So he sounds a little ADD to me.
Very.
Because that's what I'll do.
He was brought to Dachau after much scandal, this Romanian prince. He was living with his mother in Germany while fucking anyone he could get his hands on. Rudy assumed, because he was so horny, that he wasn't really gay, but that he was probably bored of women and he just needed some new excitement, right?
Oh, okay.
It's not the case. He was just a massive sexual deviant that probably should have been committed into a mental institution instead of being put in Dachau. Like, I'm not in a kink shame, but the way they made it sound like it was like a sex addiction, not necessarily he's just out there having a good time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm not a slut shamer. I'm a slut famer. Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out where they thought taking like a whole bunch of gay men and putting them all in a cell together was going to stop them being gay. That's just
Nazi logic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
None of it makes sense. He would be in prison, and the first thing they would do is strip search. And after him being weirdly shy, they were able to get the prince undressed, which was kind of weird. But
he was like, "No, you can't see it. I'll show you.
You're gonna buy me dinner first.
I'm gonna show you Pete. You ready?"
That's when they discovered.
That's what I'm picturing. I'm sure that's not what happened, but that's what I'm picturing.
Well, when he finally got naked, that's when they discovered that his entire body. No, his entire body was covered in tattoos of sexual things.
Like, I'm so fucking here for it.
Like a Kama Sutra on the go.
Oh, so you mean like when he would be with someone, he'd be like, "Let's do nipple tat."
Yeah, let's do my left nipple tat. See this one on my bicep? I've been really wanting to try
and watch
that.
When I flex it. Okay, you see how they're moving? That's what we're gonna do. I'm here for it. Fucking here for it.
The fun wouldn't stop there though, because That's when they discovered just how quickly he could be excited by a mere touch or someone just being near him. That's why I think it's a sexual compulsion addiction, because, like, he would just, like, start fucking masturbating furiously. Anybody
Maybe
come
he
close to him. You
had
could breathe on him hard.
maybe he had a tumor on his pituitary gland and it was releasing too much testosterone.
That's what I'm saying. I think it was definitely not a,
It doesn't sound like the average man.
no. It seems like a very isolated case.
It does.
One of my favorite quotes from this passage was Rudy saying, quote, "After a few hours, I went to see how this rare plant was thriving, and I was met by the room senior who begged me to release him at once from his charge."
He was like, "Bruh, I can only watch him jack his dick for so long."
He said he would tell him just how easily excited homie would get and how he'd just have a go at himself right there, and it would happen in front of Hoess when he would took him to the doc for an exam. And I can imagine Rudy be like,
a bump.
9!
We hit a bump on the way, and old dude started fucking humping the seatbelt. Like, I can't.
The doc recommended the man be committed because curing him was a waste of time. He could barely work either because he was great at masturbating. Because while he was great at masturbating, he was so weakly that he fell over trying to push a wheelbarrow.
He was like, "My forearms are so tired."
Like, you don't realize the sesh I just had, okay?
I have a little elbow tendonitis.
Because some people call it tennis elbow, I call it masturbator's elbow. Eventually, Rudy would recall, it was all quite useless. They tried tying his hands, but that was not effective for long. He was given sedatives and kept cool, all in vain. He became weaker and weaker. Nevertheless, he crawled out of bed and attempted to reach the other prisoners. He was put under arrest pending the decision of the Reichsführer SS. 2 later, he was dead. He had died while masturbating.
Oh, fuck.
He died doing what he loved.
He died. Yes, he did. He's like when a dog scoots their ass across the ground.
Oh!
He was just scooting his dick across the ground when he was tied up.
He can handle it.
That's actually really sad. And he probably did have a medical condition.
He had to have, but
He had to have.
when he said rare plant, I was like, you are right. Yeah, that is a rare plant.
I've heard of unusual things like soldiers masturbating in porta potties.
I don't know anybody like that.
Me either. But this is a little bit further.
Just kidding. While presenting the body of the prisoner to his mother, she stated his death was a blessing. He had been uncontrollable, and that need to fuck made life just impossible.
Oh, I bet. When I'm like, tell the family to sit down to dinner, and one of my kids is over there whacking his dick because the tablecloth rubbed is like, it gets to a point where I'm like, I can't with you anymore.
She had consulted specialists in Europe without success. He had escaped every sanatorium she had put him in. Hell, she put him in a monastery and he was kicked out of it.
Shocking.
At the end of her rope, she had suggested suicide to him, which is fucking wild, but I can't say what it was like for her or if I would do the same. You can never say what someone would do, like what you would do in someone's shoes until you are actually in those fucking ballet shoes.
24/7 JJ walked around with his dick out jacking it, I'd be like, if you don't jump out the window, I'm going to push you out of it.
Have I recommended suicide lately?
Sorry, guys. Dark humor. Dark
Very
times
dark.
calls for dark humor. I would never encourage that. And if you're struggling, please honestly do seek help.
Absolutely. Another unique type of prisoner was that of the prominents. While at the beginning it was a few political prisoners, it would vastly increase to include people who just did not even know why they were jailed, or if they were currently arrested or just being detained.
Go ahead. I'm sure that 90% of them were like that. I'm not even know why the fuck
am I arrested here. And the guards would be like, I don't know, dog.
I don't know either. I just shot a guy. They told me an hour later to kill him. I don't even know why I did it.
They would be kept separate from all the other prisoners and given no privileges whatsoever. After a while, it went from a few to many, and even the guards would not even know the reason for their incarceration. So while in today's jail, it's normal to not ask prisoners their crimes as a guard, using that category system of what kind of prisoner they were was like, there was a lot of emphasis. So that was very much talked about.
They still do that now. You're separated by category.
Well, yes, but like not necessarily. Well, Yeah, they're different categories.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're
You're
right. You're
violent, you're
correct. You're
nonviolent,
correct.
you're sex offenders,
Yeah.
so to some degree,
Yes. Mirrors.
I mean, how
Crazy.
violent was your violent offense? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's that's your story to tell.
That's your problem, not mine. The reason I even bring um, this type up particularly is that Rudy would delve into the prisoners in this category who he claimed to have a regular interaction with, except he didn't. He lied or made up most of this portion of the story. So it was like an evangelical pastor named Niemöller. He was in prison for preaching resistance, but in reality, he was preaching that men are just men, even if their name is Hitler, and that God is God.
Sounds like he was talking facts.
He also preached that Jews were humans.
Oh, good for him.
Rudy would state that he was well treated, super comfortable, even insisted he was a bit of a prima donna. Niemöller had happened to be a U-boat captain in World War I and had renounced that life in favor of being a pastor. He would ask to be reinstated to join the war in 1938. According to Rudy, it was because he wanted to be a U-boat captain, and Hitler personally declined his offer because he had refused to wear the Nazi uniform years prior. In truth, he did ask to rejoin. It was a colonel who declined. Then he sent his uniform into the regime. Hitler had nothing to do with it.
He was like, "Look, I'll join your army just because I want to drive a boat, but I'm not wearing a swastika."
Yeah, like, fuck that shit. He would eventually be moved to Dachau and with other religious prisoners and would have more pleasant life there, which was also a straight up lie. Rudy said he read all his correspondence, also a lie, because they had a specific department that handled censorship for prisoners. So he had no reason to even be in their letters.
I'm surprised they let him write letters. So the more you know, the more you learn.
Yeah. I honestly have no clue why it's even included, except for the fact that he kept insisting that things were all gravy and that Sachsenhausen was a soft place. The man who did some of the translation for Rudy's book also has extensive footnotes with corrections. His name was Primo Levi, and he was a Jewish Holocaust survivor. His brother was in Sachsenhausen, and he reported a much different atmosphere than the Orange is the New Black comedic and relaxed atmosphere that Rudy suggests.
Really? I'm shocked.
Now, it wouldn't be a prison if you didn't have people trying to escape. Noting that mostly criminals were in Sachsenhausen and the political prisoners were in Dachau, it made for two drastically different escape styles. The Dachau escapes were rare and well organized, and they would quietly sneak out to avoid detection. Sachsenhausen was more like prison riots, and people had no plan. Either way, Rudy explained to Ika, who was already high-strung, and had a special intolerance for escapes. He would emphasize that at no time should any inmate ever escape. Everything that can be done to prevent escapes should be done. There we go. This meant sounding the alarms instantly and locking down the prison for as long as the escapee is on the run. This meant guards would stand for 20 plus hours while others hunted down the prisoner.
Whew, I don't know if I don't want to be in the hunting party or the standing party.
I mean, even eventually, like, if
both sound awful.
When they did roll calls, if somebody had gotten out of roll call and ran away, even the inmates would have to stay in roll call for hours until that person got returned.
I'm just going to lay down and then shoot me if you want to,
please
but I'm not fucking staying in here. Just like I'm not building this prison.
I'm not. It's going to be a no for me.
It's going to be no for me, dog.
If they were thwarted by a guard, Ika would praise and promote that individual and give them the day off. The same goes for those who caught them.
Day off after working 20 hours straight?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks.
They would get the day off in a commendation. The opposite happened if you were found guilty of allowing or not preventing an escape. They'd be severely punished if it was even suspected of the tiniest mistake that led to an escape. And of course, if it was another prisoner assisting in the escape, their punishments were much worse. When people returned to camp, Ika had a special tradition that they would wear a plaque around the neck that said, "I am back," while beating a drum. It's like the shame, cling, shame, cling. And of course, if it was another prisoner assisting in the escape, their punishments were much worse. Oh, never mind. Sorry. I already read that. At the end of the ghastly parade through the camp, he would give the inmate 20 lashes and send them to a penal colony. Which I don't know what that entails, but I didn't want to go down that wormhole. He talked about 3 specific escapes, and they really show you how determined humans can be in the matters of life or death. One was a group of 7 men that dug a tunnel under their beds, just one of their beds, and they escaped for a few days. So one of the guards saw one of the escaped inmates walking the streets of Berlin. He was quickly arrested, interrogated, or more like tortured, basically, and he got the others' locations, and everybody was brought back to camp.
Man, why you gotta be a
I
snitch?
know. Just gotta take one for the crew, man.
Yeah.
Another fella, this one was described as a professional criminal, but decorator by trade, was assigned to work on homes of SS guards within the ring of sentry posts around the camp. There he met the maid of the doctor of the camp and fell in love. So of course they devised a plan for him to escape. He first created a hiding spot in the doctor's home and loaded it with supplies. Once the escape sirens went off, he crawled in with his food, wine, and a gun and waited. Rudy recalled searching for the doctor's home, not knowing the prisoner was mere feet away with his gun cocked, ready to shoot should he be discovered. After 4 days of guards being on near constant duty in search of him, he changed his some of doctor's clothes and made his way out of the camp to the train station and on a train destined to Berlin with a suitcase full of the doc's most valuable items. He would get caught, unfortunately, because he was trying to sell those items.
Oh, come on, dude.
You gotta go a little bit further if you're gonna pawn shit then.
You do.
He would be returned to camp, of course, and Ike would be pissed he even had a gun, but after a hefty payment from the doc, he let it slide.
Some
Money
things
talks.
don't change.
Mhm. The last one I'm gonna talk about was a guy who was working the clay pits digging. He would watch the trains coming in and out of the camp and how they were searched for days. Just seeing the pattern, seeing which ones were out, where were they looking. He surmised that while they checked the engine, they did not check under the engine. So he needed to find a way into that section as there were panels that went all the way around down to the railroad tracks to prevent people from getting in there. He would discover the back panel was loose and would jump in and hold on.
Oof.
Down a ways, he'd let go, and the train kept going right over him. Once it passed, he got up, ran into the woods, and headed north because he knew his disappearance would be noticed quite quickly, and he wasn't wrong. Home, home he made it through the woods and across farms, stealing produce and cow's milk for sustenance and clothes to blend in. He would be caught trying to get to Denmark in a fishing boat he stole. As he made his way out into the water, other fishermen noticed and recognized he was stealing the boat and captured him. He was this close to freedom.
Mm. He should have just hitched a ride, asked for a ride, swam it.
So let's go on and talk about Auschwitz now. In 1939, Rudy would get a beautiful Christmas present, a promotion to commandant of the protective custody camp at Sachsenhausen. And I think you get an idea of how he changes the colors of events or completely glosses over or neglects to mention them at all. One particular story showcased to me his callous disregard of humanity. On January 18th, 1940, Host ordered more than 800 prisoners who were ill and unable to work to remain standing all outside in thin prison clothing and a temperature of minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit with no jackets, gloves, or cold weather protection of any kind.
They probably didn't last long.
When they collapsed, block elders tried to take the frozen inmates to the camp infirmary, to which Host ordered it closed. When he asked why this was necessary, he replied, "If the others must freeze, then these malingerers can spend the day in the cold too. So because they're so sick and they can't work, you should just be out here too." The prisoner who reports the incident, a capo with supervision over others, says that when he finally told Host the men can't take anymore, he received the curt reply, "They aren't men, they are prisoners."
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got confused.
Yeah. During that day, 78 inmates died and another 67 died that night. The account of this incident is consistent with that of a former prisoner at Auschwitz who testified that Host would watch beatings and hangings if they were watching a movie, but with no reaction showing in his face. Unfortunately for him, his promotion to protective custody camp leader would cause some friction with his superior because in January 1940, SS Loritz would become commandant of the entire camp. He was mad at Rudy because he felt like his promotion that got him to Sachsenhausen was something Rudy had done behind his back, and that now he's like Rudy's working for his arch rival. Like, how dare you?
How dare.
It was hella petty because he basically said he didn't, but like the guy saw more potential um than Loritz had, and he wanted to give Rudy more opportunities than the dead end job at Dachau. So regardless, it would be a transfer that would lead to his next promotion. Himmler and the rest of the upper echelon had plans to begin a new camp in Auschwitz or Auschwitzheim. Auschwitzheim, that's it, the town. So he visited Rudy and asked him to be commandant, which caught him off guard. He did not expect to become a commandant so fast.
Me?
Me?
Little me?
For
Oh my
real?
God.
No.
Okay.
Especially not considering there were other senior SS who had long awaited a commandant post to become open. Himmler would give him an urgent and tough task. He needed to build a transit camp that could hold 10,000 prisoners, and to add to further difficulty, he had to source his own materials as Germany would not supply any.
So what I need you to do is build this prison, but I'm not going to give you anything to do.
I'm not going to give you shit. You're going to figure it yourself.
Go chop some trees down or something.
It is 1940, and Britain and France had declared war on Germany the previous fall, so war is ramping up quickly and violently. It was 1940. Britain and France had declared war on Germany the previous fall, so war was ramping up quickly and violently with the invasion of Denmark and Norway. And from that point on, in Auschwitz, it almost sounds like he aimed to create the most hardworking and productive camp out of all of them whatsoever. He would get up before his SS soldiers, and go to bed after them. He would treat them and the prisoners with the above average kindness and support. The only way he could accomplish a task like this was total cooperation and hard work from guards and prisoners alike, and that required treating them better. What? No way. What he did not count on was the variable of all the personalities and work ethic, stating, within a few months, I might even say the first weeks, I became bitterly aware that all the goodwill and the best intentions were doomed to be dashed to pieces against human inadequacy and sheer stupidity of most of the officers and men posted to me. And this is like a reoccurring thing. He complains the entire fucking book about he didn't have the right people.
Then nobody was as smart as him.
Yeah. Everything would have been just fine if they had picked out the healthiest Jews to work. Okay. And that they had given him better people underneath him. That would have solved
It's always
every
somebody
problem.
else's fault.
Somebody else's fault. Nothing about all these murders and stuff, but whatever.
Nothing about everything you're doing is wrong.
For real.
Maybe that's why it didn't work.
It's here that he starts to distance himself from the atrocities in specific ways, saying that everyone was working towards the old hand ways, which I assume is the intended Nazi way, which is not at all kind to inmates, and that the way he wanted to run his camp was with better treatment than all the other concentration camps. Boy, I too want the nicest concentration camp superlative. That would be a delight.
Sir, actions speak louder than words. You were not being nice to anyone.
He would say how everyone was just too set in their ways, prisoners included, so that camp was defective from start. And that's what led to all the devious things that would eventually come.
Victim blaming too.
Right. He would complain that he couldn't use political prisoners, only criminals, and he was sent 30, to which only 8 were of his approval for the work they anticipated. This is where he also says the real ruler, in his words, were the officers in charge, not the commandant. There was a first and second officer in Auschwitz owing to its size, and he blames the lack of success on his own Rappeführer. Regardless of the soldiers, he needed to start working on obtaining supplies for the 40 square miles they intended to place the camp on. Rudy would mention that many things were available in Poland, whereas Germany was far more strapped for supplies, which is why he had to source them himself. So he's like, he complained about it, and then he was like, but he was right. I should have known better. At one point, he talks about riding to this village, and the translator adds a funny remark that the towns he went to were at most 60 miles from Auschwitz. So, oh, sorry, you had to travel so far to source materials for your literal death camp. Oh. The 30 prisoners who had now been tattooed with numbers 1 through 30 were set out working to clear the old Polish camp and to search for supplies. Many of the buildings there were old Polish barracks, including what would be Rudy's home. It was built specifically for a Polish officer over the previous installation. They would have to MacGyver some things and scramble for others. Barbed wire was especially difficult, and they ended up sourcing it from old ruins of posts and such. And they would also evacuate Zone 1 of the 40 square miles and prepare to evacuate the second zone for building. The first zone had covered 3 whole villages, including that of Birkenau, which would be later used in the second phase of Auschwitz. Rudy would say he was running himself ragged, insisting on doing everything himself. He would begrudgingly pass tasks off to his insubordinates, even though he knew they would carry him out in the opposite manner of which he chose. And you know what? I feel you there, though, Rudy, because I've had that happen in my life.
I have too. I do understand.
It is frustrating, okay?
Sometimes it's hard to delegate when people just won't do it as good as you.
Mm-hmm. Gluck, which was a senior SS that was over him, said that Rudy's downfall was trying to do it all himself, that a commandant should perform 99% of his job behind his desk by telephone. And I'm like, you know what? I like that.
Isn't that the problem with the CEOs nowadays?
Yeah.
They sit behind the desk and tell us what to do, and they have no fucking idea what's going on.
Not a clue. Rudy would argue that if they hadn't sent him such awful capos and guards, he wouldn't have had to do it all himself.
Sad face.
He would say that Gluck couldn't understand, as he had never worked in a concentration camp, stating, "This is why he could never understand or appreciate my real needs."
Oh, okay.
Some of the quotes are so unreal that I have to include them.
Absolutely.
Rudy decided that after a time, he needed to either wholly dedicate his time on the task of building the camp or the inmates, not both. So he let the inmates felt welfare to the subordinates because the camp's construction was a great import. Because fuck human life, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
A month after their first 30 prisoners, they would receive 728 Polish male political prisoners, including Catholic priests and Jews. Upon arrival, the Poles lined up in 5 rows and were met by the head officer Karl Frisch, who announced, "You have not come here to a sanatorium, but to a German concentration camp, and there's no other way out than through the chimney of a crematorium.
Oh,
If one does not like that, then they could throw themselves on the wire immediately. If there are Jews in the transport, they are allowed to live no more than 2 weeks, priest 1 month, and the others 3 months." He was the epitome. Frisch was the epitome of an evil Nazi.
oh my.
The gasp I gasped at some of the shit he did to people was sickening. I would highly recommend, if you're squeamish, you don't listen to it from here on out, because it's just going to get worse and worse. But also, this is a bit of a wormhole when learning about Frisch, because I felt it necessary, considering we are speaking about Auschwitz. He is most famously responsible for the death of Maximilian Kolbe. Kolbe, a Franciscan friar, was arrested in 1941 and ended up in Auschwitz as prisoner 16,670. He would remain practicing as a priest despite being verbally and physically abused for it, and this would lead to his death. In 1941, that July, a few inmates escaped. Frisch was especially hard about escapes, to no one's surprise, and would torture prisoners, even ones that were not trying to escape. In this case, he picked 10 prisoners to put in a room and said they would starve until the prisoner was to return. One guy started screaming, "But I have a wife and children," and Colby said, "I'll take his place." And he did. And so they locked up the Colby and the other people, and they said that they spent the whole time basically in prayer. They didn't have water or food for 2 weeks. Colby and only 2 others survived, miraculously. He remained calm the entire time of his incarceration, choosing silence or prayer. So when they decided to inject the remaining 3 with carbolic acid, he calmly held his arm up, ready to go. He would be martyred by Pope John Paul II. Besides that murder, Frisch was famous for various tortures and punishments he would happily inflict on prisoners, in addition to terrorizing them by saying things like this direct quote: "For us, all of you are not human, but a pile of dung. For such enemies of the Third Reich as you, the Germans will have no favor and no mercy. We will be delighted to drive you all through the grates of the crematorium furnaces. Forget your wives, children, and families. Here you all savor like dogs." Rudolph credits this man, Frisch, with the idea of using Zyklon B. But we're just going to get into that later.
Yay.
While Rudy says he was not fond of Frisch, his actions deem otherwise, because both were responsible for horrific things together. He was responsible for the tortured death of victims locked inside standing cells in the basement of the bunker. This was Block 11. And they would be in there until they died. And when I say standing cells, it was literally like a tiny room, and you had like half a millimeter between you and a wall. And eventually, like, you'd get tired and your body couldn't even, like, you couldn't even fold your legs. So imagine how much that would hurt.
This is really depressing.
Sorry. These prisoners would band together over time, and 200 of the 728 would survive the entire length of their imprisonment, which is quite impressive considering it's about 5 years of constant torture, disease, starvation, and work. When reading Rudy's biography, he doesn't even mention that first transport, just how hard it is to make a concentration camp with a bunch of goons as your staff. And that's hard, yo.
Mm.
By the end of 1940, they had created the zone of interest, which is the entire where the whole camp sits, 40 square miles. And it's constantly patrolled. It's outside a little town of Auschwitz, and it had drastically changed with a tons of local Poles being forced out and being made to abandon their homes. In that place, SS took up residence, as well as many other Germans. It was safer to be in the country as there were a lot of air raids happening in Berlin and other major German towns, and it had become a bit of a Stepford, with the wives of the SS officers being held in high social regard with great focus on an idyllic German community. They had come in part of the general Germanization program for ethnically cleansing the area and developing them for the Aryan Germans. So, getting all them fucking Poles out of here. We're going to Germanize this. They had huge plans for rapid expansion in major thoroughfares and stadiums, as Germans were known for their love for physical activity like soccer. While some, like the local theater, were realized, the rest was abandoned as the camp would eventually be evacuated and liberated. So, while you had upper echelon soldiers' families moving there, you would even have regular soldiers' families relocate. And it helped to try to like normalize life in the town because it's a fucking death camp.
Yeah.
It's literal crimes against humanity happening, but like if we have like parties and stuff, it's normal, right?
Right.
And while it's technically forbidden, SS soldiers would give tours of the camp to their wives and their girlfriends.
No thanks.
Oh, it gets worse. The families of the camp soldiers used the medical facilities located across from a crematorium, so it wasn't unusual to have them in camp. Hell, there were even official camp functions where you'd bring your whole family for a SS Christmas party, a puppet show, or any other form of entertainment that they could drum up. They even had famous German celebrities come and perform. Eventually, Hoess had to put a rule in to ban unaccompanied children, not just ban children, ban unaccompanied children.
You need an adult with you.
You had baby children frolicking in a death camp.
Well, what other way do you raise the best soldiers and teach them when they're young? This is the way it is.
While visiting, it was normal to witness families treat prisoners as a form of entertainment. Their witnesses from 1944 were the Birkenau camp compound leader, Johann Schwarzhuber, made prisoners dance at the electric fence for his family on the other side. Nothing was off limits. For those who did not have wives, they opened an SS brothel in 1942 after a visit from Pole from the WVHA, which is kind of like their nucleus of their government, like their death machine government program. We're going to go in depth on that later. Don't worry.
Yay.
Now, of course, this was a ethnically cleansed brothel with only German prostitutes, okay? We're not going to be doing no mixing of the races here. No mixes, no countries, no mixes of nothing. Himmler was a great advocate of having brothels for his soldiers as well. He was worried they'd become starved.
We wouldn't want that.
We'll
starve these inmates of food and water, but I don't want my soldiers to not get their...
Those balls need to be emptied regularly. However it was colored, things were getting darker. By now, the signature Arbeit Macht Frei sign was now bannered above its entrance. The slogan's introduction to the concentration camps came from Theodor Eicke from the Dachau concentration camp. And from Dachau, Rudy said, let's do it here. That sounds like a great idea. Meaning that work sets you free, but with a caveat that freedom means being free from being alive. The Auschwitz sign was made by prisoner laborers, including Polish master blacksmith Jan Liwaks. It features an upside-down B, which is interpreted as an act of defiance by the prisoners who made it. There's a slogan that Polish prisoners would use concerning this slogan. Arbeit Macht Frei durch Crematorium Nummer 3. Work makes you free through crematorium number 3. And that's where we're going to leave off this time.
That's probably a good time to take a break.
Next time, we're going to delve into some more of the building of Auschwitz, about I think we're gonna go into some about his family. I mean, just like his parents and his sisters, he loved his family. Like, he actually liked them a lot more than his original, but he also did not he kept them separate, kinda like they did his parents. Like, they were objects, not necessarily people at times.
Mhm, mhm.
And then, of course, we're gonna hear about the final solution and how that's handed out and how the concentration camps really changed from just prisoner camps to full-on death camps.
Mhm.
So let's get excited about that,
I
guys.
can't wait. Can't wait.
And until then, find us on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. Check out our merch. Let us know if you have your own Too Close to Home stories. Did you have a secret grandfather who was a Nazi? Did you have a relative who survived the Holocaust?
That would be interesting.
I would love to. I mean, honestly, one of the things that I found was super interesting in my research was watching the documentary "The Commandant's Shadow," and in that documentary, his son, Rudolph Hoess's son, meets one of the women that was in prison in Auschwitz, and it's just like so interesting to see how they interact with each other and to hear from their point of views and stuff like that. There's always nothing was the same. There was no every day was the same. There was no real structure. Like I said, it was super chaotic. So every witness will have a different story.
Right.
And I just I can't not read them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so don't hesitate to reach out. I know this is a bummer of a subject, but we would like to hear more, of course, always.
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 Don't forget to rate and subscribe on all our platforms. That feels a little cheap after I just said all that. Don't forget that that's it, actually. That's
right.
it. Well, I'm fried.
Me too.
And until next time,
Stay safe.
keep your head on a swivel.
Don't bring it too close to home. And I got nothing to add to that because I'm going to go home and curl up in my bed and cry.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.